What have you made of the Spurs offseason? It's been fascinating. So they trade number 8, becomes Rob Dillingham. That goes to Minnesota. They get the 2030 pick swap and a 2031 pick. They take on Harrison Barnes, who kind of helps their team or works for their team. They also get another pick swap as part of that equation, and in 2031, I believe. And then, like, they sign CP3. We still don't know the official deal because the math is being worked out with the Harrison Barnes trade. I've seen it framed two ways, that the Spurs got better and now they're set up to make upgrades kind of on the fly mid-season or before the season, or that they're stealthily tanking again because they can go to Victor Wembanyama and say, look, we got some veterans in here. Like, we're building slowly, gradually, but that they're still going to be bad. Where do you sort of land on, like, what this team's immediate angle is?
First off, they can't stealthily tank. And it's not because they can't. It's just they can't, because Wemby is going to win them more games than he should, right? Like, the idea that we're going to tank and Wemby is going to be on the floor playing the same allotment of minutes, like, you're not going to lose enough, because so many teams are going to be trying to tank. You're not beating Brooklyn to the bottom. You're not beating Washington to the bottom. Like, you're not, I mean, Portland, Utah, you're not beating these teams to the bottom in that sense. And I think that's kind of the idea that they're trying to stealthily tank. If they are, and you know, like, I've obviously, having been in that organization, which feels like, I mean, it was forever ago, so it's massively changed since I was there. But the idea that they would stealthily tank would be like, okay, are you guys stupid? You can't, unless you don't play Wemby at all, you know, or maybe go back to Point Sohan. But, like, I don't see that being I don't see that being a thing. So, like, everybody that goes like they're stealthily tanking, like, not happening for all of that. And I think I like what they did. One, they got a point guard that can actually pass the freaking ball, which I love. I think
praise at Trey Jones over here, man.
Well, no, I mean, I like Trey Jones as a backup. I don't know if he's a starting level point guard. And to be honest, I don't know if Chris Paul is a starting level point guard anymore. But I do know that Chris understands the assignment, right? That big 7-foot alien dude, he needs the ball. And I will make sure he gets the ball. And I will get him post entry passes. I will get him on the pick and pops. I'll find him on lobs. I'll find, like, you know, like, Chris's shooting days and stuff is not going to be good. It's not like they did a great job stretching the floor with his shooting or anything like that. But he's just going to get him the ball. I just, that alone is worth a couple more wins. And so you have competent point guard play for really 48 minutes between him and Trey Jones for the most part. I like the Barnes pickup, just solid, you know, not like crazy high or anything like that. I think a lot of it's going to kind of depend on Devin Vassell's development in terms of what this team does. I think they're going to end up flipping Keldon Johnson at some point.
Ooh.
But I also just love the picks that they're getting.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was mad about the Dillingham thing when they traded 8. I was like, yo, like, they're actually thinking several steps ahead, in the sense of, like, hey, when we're good, Minnesota might be pretty bad, and that 2031 pick that we're going to get from them might really help, might be like a lottery pick when we're good. And I think that's kind of like almost a smart little thinking there with all of that stuff. I like Castle. I think Castle is going to be a really good fit for them. I don't know if he helps, right?
He was interesting to me when they didn't use their other pick, because I thought they needed someone that probably had more of a proven jumper and or profiled as more of a, I'm ready to set up others, quote unquote, Wemby. And I just didn't. And again, I get like knee deep into the draft a few weeks before the draft, so I don't know enough about him. And there's some people that are very high on him. And I know defensively, he might end up being a menace. I found that pick fascinating when they ended up not keeping their other one, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Like, hey, they went this way with that, so they'll get more offense with the 8th pick for that stuff. But I just think defensively, they're going to be in a good position. I think offensively, his game will develop to what they need it to be. They're always going to need more shooting. Mm-hmm. They're always going to need to find ways to stretch the floor and whatnot. And Castle might not be that guy, but in the long run, I trust that they will find those guys. And this is their last run in the lottery, most likely, with their own pick. Or at least probably so high in the lottery, I should say. They might end up in the lottery again next year, but I don't think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. And I think they're just in a good position. I like what they've done. And it's funny to me that some people seem to be criticizing it. this is probably the same group of people that were saying that, hey man, like Wemby's upset, man, midway through the season, and then they better be careful. They might lose him. And all of that, that whole thing. And I was like, are you guys drunk? Like, what are we doing here at that point? Like, it's just so silly that was such a topic of conversation. But I like what they've done. I like they brought in veteran guys.
I like what they've done. The Stefan Castle thing is the only one I have a question about, but I think that's just like, okay, you haven't seen him play in the NBA yet. Like, you're going to have questions regardless. I loved their offseason, provided that just because they were linked to Larry Markin, it's like, it does seem like they might be ready to cash in some chips.
Oh, if they get Markin in, trouble.
And the thing that I keep coming back to, and you hit on this when you said, even if they wanted to, short of shutting down Victor Wembanyama, they can't tank. When Wemby played with Trey Jones last year, and we both agree that Chris Paul, not what he was, but he's an upgrade over Trey Jones. The Spurs were a plus 5 points per 100 possessions with Wemby and Trey Jones on the court. It was better than that, but it was around plus 5. The offense was barely league average, so they're killing it on defense. When you add Devin Vassell into that assortment, they were plus 10 points per 100 possessions, and that's over like a 1,700 plus possession sample size. So that's not nothing. And now you've gotten, I would say, 2 NBA, well, Chris Paul, certainly NBA caliber. I know Kings fans, anyone who has Harrison Barnes on their team for like more than 3 years, so like they're done with Harrison Barnes. But like, you have another NBA level rotation player who should be able to hit a 3. I think they're going to be better. I think they're planning on being better on purpose, and they didn't make a home run swing, but like, you don't need to rush. Like, we used to, remember how many people killed the Pelicans for trying to reorient around AD too quickly back in the day, making so many just short-circuity or short-sighted moves. So I do think, look, if they get Larry Markin in, I'll say
it's going to be a problem for everybody.
Like, I'll say inflammatory things, but by and large, I think I like the work they've done this offseason. I think it's smart to set themselves up with those stabs at the draft in the future, because they're going to be too good to have high draft picks. So you either get to replenish your rotation with cheaper players, or you have these trade assets that just have this before they turn, they're going to have this mystique, like these swaps and these picks. So I've loved their offseason. Would I like to have seen them get Larry Markin or take kind of a bigger swing? Yeah, sure. But like, I think they've done enough to say, no, I'm not prepared. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I'm with you. They probably end up in the lottery, just not high, but like, they were a 20-something win team. I think that just Wemby's progression of growth, coupled with if they get good health from their new additions, like, this is a team that like could contend in like the mid 30s, and to have like a 12, 13, 14 win jump isn't nothing. And you mentioned Devin Vassell. I'll wrap up my point here before I throw it to you. I'm a huge Devin Vassell guy. And like, we saw a little dip in his pull-up 3-pointer last year. Still shot 46% on pull-up 2s, moves well without the ball, shot about 40% on catch and shoot 3s. His job gets a little easier with CP3 there to me as well. Even with Harrison Barnes opening the floor instead of Jeremy Sohan or even Keldon Johnson, who kind of fell off last year for them. So I love their top 2 guys to me, and Devin Vassell and Victor, like, having those two, just like, that's the future of your team. And I just think they're so well set up, not just for the future, but to maybe make like kind of a mini mega leap now.
Yeah, and I think everybody's they have to make a leap now. They have to make a leap now. Like, why? Why? Like, it's like they want them to take, because the thing is, if they take a home run swing and miss, like, that sets you back. Let me just be honest with you. I'd be killing them if they traded for Trae Young. When that was a possibility, where people were talking about Trae Young and this, he'd be a great fit for the Spurs. Said, no, the Spurs would be a great fit for Trae Young. He wouldn't fit with them. He wouldn't take them to another. That's the type of swing that you would give up assets for, and it wouldn't work in the long run. And I think that's the kind of stuff that, like, I think everybody's trying to rush and force them into this stuff. I really just like them being a little bit methodically slow, and there will be a time where they will have to take a swing, and it might be next summer, might be the summer after. I don't know. But they will take a swing, and then we'll decide then if it's a good swing or a bad swing. But I think it's one of those situations where they just didn't need to rush it. The dude won the Rookie of the Year, and finished second in Defensive Player of the Year. He could have
been the defense if like there wasn't just this generational defender in front. Like, he could have won Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie. That's fucking wild.
But so then everybody immediately, okay, the Spurs have to make all these moves to contend for next year. None of the moves they could make now would make them a contender this year, short of like getting Paul George and LeBron and Clay in the same offseason, right? Like
Well, why
something.
didn't they just do that then?
Yeah, exactly. They just because they don't want to, Dan. That was why. Nothing else. Had nothing to do with the possibilities of things.
I do agree that they didn't need to rush. I love watching Wemby so much that like I would have maybe done something a little bit reckless, but I'm perfectly fine with they didn't. The only thing I actually disagree with you with is it would have come down to cost for me, but I actually like the idea of Trae Young on this
Yeah, you
team.
would.
Not my top choice, but I thought, yeah, I would have, but I wouldn't have killed them for trading for Trae Young. I probably would have applauded them for rolling the dice. Not that they had to or that they should have, but I don't think it would have been a bad move.
Well, I'll tell you why I was against the Trae Young thing. Okay, one, you need a guy that's going to pass the ball to Wemby and understand it is Wemby's team and not his team. And Young, at his point in his career, would go to the Spurs and would think it's his team. And I wouldn't blame him. I would think the same thing.
Even going from like, I feel like it's one thing in Atlanta where you've been there the whole time, they've rebuilt around you, but going to a different team wouldn't shift his mindset at all. You don't think?
It depends on the team he goes to. If he goes to a young team, say if he went to Orlando, same situation, right? Because he's like, I'm the veteran here. I'm the guy here. I'm the one that has the experience. I made it to the conference finals 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? I'm old now. I don't remember.
That was 2021. That was the last. Yeah, I think that was 2021.
So it's 3 years ago. Okay. So 3 years ago. And like, I'm, I understand the NBA now at this point. Follow me. And, and everybody's response was like, well, Wemby will be able to cover for him defensively. Sure. But like, I don't want a guy that's going to take touches away from Wemby. I don't want that. Fair. And I think that's the important thing there. And the ball's going to be predominantly in Trae Young's hands. And he has proven when they had DeJounte Murray in Atlanta, he doesn't do well off ball. So like when it goes to Wemby, he ain't going to be doing anything. And I think, so for me, the Trae Young thing was a mistake, but that's the kind of move they needed to stay away from. It looks like they're staying away from. And so I don't have to say much more about it and just accept the fact that you were probably wrong, Dan.